Hi, I am Thulisile Tlou. I'm 27 years of age, turning 28. I'm from Middleburg in Mpumalanga in a township called Mhluzi. I am the fourth child in my family. I have two big sisters and one big brother. And growing up in my family, I was raised by both parents, my mom and my dad. Growing up as a child, I had a very great upbringing. Both my parents were there, and my father was a very supportive father. He was the only one working. My mom wasn't working at that time because, like old people, they used to have, that mentality that a wife shouldn't work. And my dad was the only one working. He was working at Columbus Stainless Steel. And yeah, he was very supportive. Like, we had everything that we needed as children. And he was also supportive to my mother as well. In 1998, my father got a car accident, and he was admitted to hospital for like 2 months, and well, he couldn't walk properly, and which led for him to actually hand in his resignation, and he got his packages, and he decided to be a loan shark from there, like, and he made a living out of that. Yes, he still managed to support the family, to do everything, to take us to school and everything. And if I could remember very well, like, we used to have a great relationship with my dad. He used to take us to school with my sisters. My sister was in high school. I think she was in grade 12 by that time. He used to wake up in the morning, go buy a newspaper, go buy bread, come back home, park the car in the yard, and read the newspaper while waiting for us to get ready for school. Then he would take us to school and come back home. Fast forward to when my dad was scammed by Nigerian guys. There was a guy, if I could recall, his name was Kelvin. I don't know where they met, but I remember, well, I was still young, I was 10 by that time, but then I remember the guy told my dad that he has a way for him to have more money. And my mom, he told my mom, they discussed it, and my mom wasn't happy about it. She didn't approve it, but my dad went, he carried on, and he took all his savings, all his investments, and gave that guy money. I remember I went with my mom and dad to where they were doing their business, and he told my dad to buy a chicken. They're gonna slaughter a chicken and whatsoever, and from there they're gonna, I don't know, there were some rituals that they need to perform there. And my mom still, she wasn't happy about it, but as the head of the house, yes, like everything that my dad said, she did. And he took out all the investments and savings and gave that guy, and he told him that he must come back after 3 days, and then he will get all his money and even more than what he had. So what happened is, I remember my mom went with him there after 3 days. And when they got there, it was house to let. No one was to be found. Like, the house was empty. The people ran away with the money. Their phones were off, and they couldn't get any trace. So this really affected my mom and my dad, of course, and the whole family, because we were fully dependent on him. And I remember it used to be so tough after all this happened. I remember as kids we used to have cash box where we put in our 5 cents, 10 cents. And there was a point whereby my dad took that money just to buy bread. That's how tough it was. And this really affected him a lot, and it affected us as a family a lot. And my dad used to have like 3 cars, and now the cars were not serviced. What happened is it got so rough to a point whereby there was a time when my dad was in his bedroom and my mom caught him there with a gun in his head. And my mom took the gun from him, and then she hid it somewhere where he couldn't find it. And what he said was, you know what, even if you take the gun away from me, I would still go to the bushes and just hang myself on a tree. Like, I could still recall those words even if I was still young. I was 10 at that time. And then my dad, what he used to do at that time, during that period, he would just call us, he would call my siblings and just talk to them one by one. Like, I remember what he said to me. He said, you must study very hard, you must focus, just be yourself and just make me proud. And by that time, like, I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand what he was trying to say. And yeah, I did take his advice. I was like, oh, okay. But it really, well, those words are still stuck with me now. But at that time, I didn't understand what was going on. And what happened is, I don't know after how long, but then it went on like without the finances. And then there was one morning where my dad did the regular routines where he just wakes up, bath, and then go buy bread, buy a newspaper, and he sat in the car just as usual. So nobody suspected anything. While he was sitting, or he took the bread, he put it in the house and then went back to the car. And what he did is he shot himself inside the car. Okay, so my dad took the gun and pointed under his jaw, and the bullet came through his right eye and went through the upper body of the car. And after all this happened, he just he fell on the steering, and the hooter went on, and my mom heard the sound, and she just thought, okay, she just thought she should just check on the window what's happening, only to find out that okay, after he fell on the steering, then he opened the door and he fell down. And then my mom, when she checked on the window, she saw my dad lying down, and she quickly jumped, and then everyone was screaming. And when she went there, she found him with a gun on his hand, and like, she was so miserable at that time. Like, so she was crying, she was screaming, and I didn't know what was happening. And when I wanted to go outside, they told me to stay inside. Our neighbors came just to help us, and I remember my mom telling me that my dad said he's feeling cold. They took my dad and they put him in the garage and with a blanket, and they called an ambulance, but it took long for the ambulance to come. Then they used one of our neighbor's car to take him to the hospital. And I think he was admitted in Middleburg Hospital for a week, because from there they took him to Wheatbank from Wheatbank, he was transferred to Pretoria because it was very critical. Okay, and I remember it was almost June holidays, so my mom decided that she must send us to our aunt in Standerton. So it was me and my sister. We went to Standerton to stay with to visit my aunt there, so that we can just get away from the whole situation that's happening at home. And we stayed there, but I remember my sister, she wasn't fine. I could just see her that she wasn't herself and she wasn't happy. But I was a child and I was just, you know, I was okay, I was playing. And there was a day when we went to the mall with my aunt, my aunt, my cousins and my sister. And while we were at the mall, my aunt received a call, and it was my mom. And I remember when my aunt was talking on the phone, I think my sister overheard the whole conversation, and she just decided to just walk away at that time. And we were also surprised what was happening, and we went home. We went back home. Well, not in Middleburg, but in Standerton. And then my sister started crying, and I didn't understand what was happening. And my aunt called us together, and she told us that our dad has passed on. Well, I didn't understand what was going on, but I knew that my dad was in hospital. And just because my sister was crying, I started crying too. And I think after a day, we went back home in Middleburg. And when we got home, like, I found my mom sitting on a mattress, like the house was full. And I just ran to my mom, I hugged her, and I was crying, and she was crying a lot because, yeah, I was so close to my dad. And what happened after, okay, yeah, we did the burial and everything, and after, our life was never the same again, because now the person that we were dependent on is no longer there. It was really tough. It was really tough to a point whereby my mom had to go and look for a job. She never worked before, but she had to look for a job, and fortunate enough, she got a job as a domestic worker. And with that money that she earned, she managed to take us to school, to buy us food, and to buy us clothes, and just everything that needs to be done, you know. Okay, so what I learned from this whole situation is, because what happened actually after my dad passed on, well, we used to go to church, yes, but we didn't have that relationship with God. We were not saved. We just went to church. We were just churchgoers, you know. We didn't understand what was salvation at that time. And in my family, I'm the first one who got saved. And I really got to understand how you actually deal with situations when you know God. Because I remember my dad used to drop us at church and then go back home, then come back after to pick us up. So yes, we were also not safe, but then when you know God, when you go through tragedies and just face life situations, you have a better way to respond to it, and you act differently because now you know that God's got your back, that God is in control. So as a woman, I've learned to be independent because I took my mom's situation when she was fully dependent on my dad to actually think that maybe life is not supposed to be that way, where you fully depend on a man, where you say the man should provide for you. So that's when I had that mentality of, you know, being a hustler, just even if I didn't go to university, but I still need to work on having my own, you understand, and just be able to provide for my family. So what happened is, after high school, one of my cousins offered to take me to college because we couldn't manage to pay the fees and everything. And then I continued with my N4 up to N5, and from there I went, I got an apprenticeship at Transnet, and it took me 3 years, and I qualified as a welder. And well, I qualified 2017, and at least I managed to get a job, well, outside of Transnet, because Transnet didn't provide a job after the completion of training. But I'm a fighter. Like, I always make sure that, you know what, like, if I want something, I know that I'm just gonna fight and I'm just gonna get it. Hi, I'm Thulisile Tlou, and I've been through the most, but that doesn't stop me to bloom with grace.